protocol being observed, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you Mr. Ewart S. Williams, the Governor of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Williams was appointed Governor of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago in July 2002, following 30-year career with the International Monetary Fund. During his fund career, he was the IMF resident representative to Jamaica, Assistant Director in charge of Central America and Mexico, and Deputy Director in the Western Hemisphere Department. Mr. Williams had led IMF missions to several countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. He was the mission leader that negotiated one of the standby arrangements with Barbados in the 1980s. In 2001, he was the main architect of the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center, CARTAC, established by IMF and other multilateral and bilateral agencies to assist the region in capacity building, in public finance, marketing and banking and statistics. The center, which is located in Barbados, is now a principal source of technical assistance for Caribbean countries. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree and Master's degree in economics from the University of West Indies. He is presently chairman of the campus council of the University of the West Indies. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Mr. Ewart S. Williams, Governor of the Central Bank, Trinidad and Tobago, with loud applause to give us the opening address.
Good morning to you all, good morning. And I would take the liberty of following the chairman by avoiding the long list and simply saying all protocols observed. But you know, that's not good enough. I need to specifically recognize young Miss Lenova Pamela. You all wonderful. Whenever I get the opportunity of talking to young people, I feel forced to remind them of how rapidly things are changing. You are living in a world that is so vastly different from what existed 10 years ago. In terms of the global economy, we now have a situation where global growth is being driven by emerging market economies. China, India, Brazil, while the advanced economies are all facing serious difficulties. You know, these advanced economies now have unemployment rates ranging from 9% in the US, a similar amount in Europe. In Spain, the unemployment rate is 22.5%. In Greece, it is 18%. Those were rates that were common for developing countries. As Dr. Omelas said, I worked at the IMF for a very long time, 30 years. And the IMF was specifically established to support developing countries of Latin America and Africa. But now, in recent times, its clientele is coming largely from Western Europe, from Ireland, Portugal, Greece. Italy is on the way also. It is somewhat ironic for me to read that the IMF is now asking Brazil and Russia and India to contribute to a fund to support Western Europe. the whole thing is becoming almost surreal. The internal dynamics are also rapidly changing in terms of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Traditionally, the energy sector has been the main engine of growth. And over the past decade, this sector expanded rapidly through the growth of the petrochemical sector. Many of you would know of Trade 1 and Atlantic Energy, Trade 1, Trade 2, and Trade 3. The non-energy sector has always been a dependent sector driven by energy taxes which have polluted government spending, and government spending in turn boosts construction and other domestic services. I want to put it to you that over the next few years, the contribution of the energy sector is going to be weaker for all sorts of reasons, including the fact that our proven reserves are declining rapidly. I want to put it to you also that over the next few years, the government's ability to provide fiscal stimulus would also decline because of our growing public debt. In these circumstances, the non-energy sector will have to depend on different drivers if it is to contribute to sustainable growth and create jobs for a growing labor force. This, in essence, young people, is the case for a more dynamic non-energy sector. A sector that is able to exploit new markets based on higher levels of competitiveness and on account of new and more aggressive entrepreneurs. In short, entrepreneurship and a new kind of entrepreneur will be the keys to the prospects for achieving economic sustainability. Now, there are several definitions of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. In one definition, clearly this is the most liberal, anyone who establishes a business is an entrepreneur, and thus encouraging and facilitating business activity is seen as promoting entrepreneurship. A more formal definition used in academic circles defines entrepreneurs as opportunity-driven agents who drive economic change through innovative new firms. This definition makes a distinction between innovative entrepreneurs, that is, those who introduce new products and processes to the market, and imitating entrepreneurs, those that imitate existing activities and put them into practice. Another way of understanding the concept is through the distinction between opportunity entrepreneurs and necessity entrepreneurs. While the former identifies a gap in the market and moves to exploit it, the latter starts a business to avoid unemployment. Now, understand me, both kinds of entrepreneurs contribute in to varying degrees to employment generation and to economic development. And each category has a different implication for public policy. Well-known studies confirm that over the past 100 years, entrepreneurship was responsible for the increase in living standards and most of the job growth in developed countries, most notably in the US, in Europe and in Japan. Economic theorists as well as everyday examples suggest that rapid economic development occurs when new combinations of factors of production are unearthed through a process of entrepreneurial discovery. To put it another way, entrepreneurship propels growth and development through innovation. Innovation is the fuel that spurs improvements in productivity and economic competitiveness and provides the impetus for structural transformation. That's the recent story of China, Korea, Taiwan, and India. These are perhaps the most notable examples of countries that moved from imitative to innovative entrepreneurship. In developing countries, the small and micro enterprise sector must of necessity be the source of entrepreneurship and the engine of growth for the future. But the question is, what kind of entrepreneurship do we need? The Central Statistical Office estimates that there are now 26,000 small and medium enterprises. More than half of these enterprises are in the distribution sector. SMEs are estimated to account for 15% of total employment, and they contribute about 30% of total output, 30% of total GDP. In 2002, the government recognized that the size of the SME sector was critical to economic diversification, and it established the National Entrepreneurship Development Company, or NEDCO. Since its establishment, NEDCO has facilitated the startup of some 6,000 businesses, advancing more than 100 million in loans. In addition to NEDCO, a few years ago, the Business Development Company, which has a slightly expanded mandate, was incorporated to help medium-sized enterprises. This BDC has also been the source of financing through the form of government guarantees. Despite these fairly impressive figures, I think it's fair to say that we are not yet getting the maximum benefits from the new wave of entrepreneurial activity, in part because of certain cultural and institutional factors that exist in our society. One indicator used to measure the entrepreneurial impact on development is the opportunity to necessity ratio. The thesis is that the greater the number of opportunity entrepreneurs, the higher the level of economic development. A broader measure, the Total Entrepreneurial Activity Index, examines the share of persons in the country's labor force who are either actively involved in starting a new business or are in business for less than 2.5 years. According to World Bank statistics, for the period 2003-2005, the rate of business entry averaged 7.4% for Latin America and the Caribbean. And this compared with a world average of close to 10%. If we exclude Latin America, the Caribbean falls even further below the world average. While precise data are not available, the evidence suggests that most of the persons that we classify or view as entrepreneurs can be categorized as necessity or replicative entrepreneurs. Many of these people are involved in cottage industries, oftentimes in the informal sector, which is akin to a form of evasive entrepreneurship. I want to emphasize that these people, these entrepreneurs are important to the economy and to our social development. One must make the point, however, that these entrepreneurs must be encouraged to migrate to the formal sector and to move to activities that generate higher levels of value added. Remember that the Global Competitiveness Report put Trinidad and Tobago 86 out of 139 countries in innovation. This ranking, as well as other supporting evidence, suggests the existence of deep-seated barriers to entrepreneurship. What are some of these barriers? Culturally, in Trinidad and Tobago, there is a proclivity towards wage-earning employment, and persons that venture into small businesses are generally not considered part of the upper echelons of society. Even worse, when businesses fail, or when business failure occurs, the entrepreneur is viewed with derision. This attitude has to change if innovative entrepreneurship is to be encouraged. Second, although the government has implemented measures to support the SME sector, particularly in the area of financing, weaknesses in our public sector infrastructure frustrate the growth of entrepreneurship. For instance, the time taken for business registration, as well as the poor protection of intellectual property rights, frequently discourage the efforts of entrepreneurs. The government has estimated that in order to grow by 5 to 6% per annum, 5,000 new businesses are required each year. Achieving these targets will clearly necessitate a shift in the incentive structure to give special encouragement to entrepreneurial activity that more closely meets the tests of innovation, higher productivity, and competitive advantage. The main underlying preconditions for this strategy would seem to be: 1, a macroeconomic environment in which entrepreneurial activity is able to thrive and prosper; 2, an education system, or more broadly, a value system that encourages an entrepreneurial culture; and 3, a comprehensive support regime, including financial assistance in various forms, as well as technical support and training. Permit me a few words on each of these. Building an entrepreneurial culture is vital to promote entrepreneurship. When I was growing up, business acumen was considered to be hereditary, and involvement in business was generally reserved for certain groups. The culture of our society needs to dispel the social stigma that business failure is associated with personal failure. Our youth must be encouraged to view entrepreneurial endeavors as a respectable and a viable profession. And we need to develop a system that identifies persons with exceptional, innovative ability and potential to become high-quality entrepreneurs. Given the reality that 80% of businesses fail within 3 years of operation, the system should seek to encourage habitual entrepreneurs by designing a funding mechanism that does not overly penalize persons for past failures. The current education system needs to be much more supportive to the creation of entrepreneurship. This requires a curriculum that places more emphasis on creative and analytical thinking. While programs on entrepreneurship are now being offered at the tertiary level, a broader education plan to integrate entrepreneurship into the primary and secondary school curriculum is needed. But even if a person has the required education, there is no guarantee that the business launched will be successful. Accordingly, startups should be able to access support facilities in areas in which they are most efficient. Borrowing from the words of the current Minister of Labour and Small Enterprises, the challenge should be to establish an incubator system that will provide the critical financial, operational, and technical support vital to the establishment of successful, competitive, and innovative entities. In addition to attempts to providing incubators, we should seek to improve the linkages between the local universities, like your university, and the private sector to strengthen and promote research and development. The ultimate goal is to ensure that SMEs look beyond the local market and embrace the export challenge. As new entrepreneurs seek to get off the ground, it is incumbent on the authorities to create appropriate conditions which support entrepreneurship. In this context, the announcement in this year's budget of the establishment of the Junior Stock Exchange is a positive step in addressing the financing challenges faced by several SMEs. Ensuring better coordination between public agencies, updating business regulations, and ensuring adequate protection for private property rights are other pieces of the puzzle that must be put in place as part of an enabling small business environment. Strong institutions are an integral part of the entrepreneurship process. Without them, legitimate efforts of entrepreneurs can be overshadowed or stymied by bureaucracy and ineptness. Let me close by commending the University of Southern Caribbean for hosting this workshop and for recognizing that strengthening entrepreneurial skills is one of the key pillars of entrepreneurship promotion. With the increasing number of graduates annually, the labor market is being hard-pressed to provide not only the quantum, but the quality of the jobs that you graduates so eagerly expect and so rightly deserve. To you, I ask you to examine product markets around you identify unserved or underserved segments, and put your training to use by introducing or by seeking to introduce new products or services to fill these gaps. In so doing, you will not only be achieving your personal goals of career fulfillment, but you will be making a positive contribution to the economic development of our beautiful country. I thank you very much for listening.